No one was meant to go that far, not that deep beneath the temple, not that close to the final vault. Everyone had turned back long before, out of reverence or fear. But some say he didn't, he needed to see it. The vault no one had ever dared to open, said to hold treasures untouched for centuries, sealed behind a thick metal door. No hinges, no keyhole, no handle. Just a monstrous serpent, coiled, still, and watching. In the southern Indian state of Kerala stands the Sree Padmanabhaswamy Temple, a vast and ancient shrine dedicated to Vishnu. It dates back at least 1,400 years, though the temple, as we see it today, took shape in the 18th century, when King Marthandavarma did something extraordinary. He handed his entire kingdom over to one god, Padmanabha, a revered form of Vishnu. From that moment on, he ruled not as a king, but as Padmanabhadasa, servant of the Lord, because Padmanabha wasn't just a deity, he was the reason kings ruled at all. Inside the temple, the god is carved lying in repose on a coiled serpent, Ananta, a multi-headed guardian said to float across the cosmic ocean. But you'll never see this unless you go there in person. Photography inside the temple is strictly forbidden, not just by tradition, but by law. No cameras, no phones, not even the government carries footage of what lies within. The treasures, the statue, all of it beyond the reach of any lens. Only a handful of grainy images more than a century old exist. In a world where almost everything can be seen, the things that can't feel even more forbidden. And beneath this sacred statue, hidden below the granite floors, is something far more closely guarded. Not a room, a repository for centuries of offerings, sealed in silence and stone. For centuries, kings, queens, dynasties and devotees offered gifts to the god. Coins, jewels, idols of solid gold. All of it, century after century, sealed away beneath the sacred statue. It's not clear who built the vaults, but beneath the temple, there are 8 sealed chambers, marked A through to H, carved deep into the stone. And with each one, the secrecy deepens, and the foreboding grows louder. And some say these vaults are guarded by more than just stone, but by something older, something with teeth. They'd stayed sealed for many lifetimes, but this all changed when T.P. Sundararajan, a retired Supreme Court lawyer and devout worshipper, began legal proceedings to challenge the royal family's control over the temple. In 2011, following a years-long battle, the Supreme Court of India ordered the oldest vaults, A to F, be opened and an inventory taken. What they found was staggering. A 3.5-foot tall idol of Vishnu made entirely of gold, encrusted with emeralds and diamonds, an 18-foot gold chain, a 36-kilogram golden veil, golden coconut shells studded with rubies, at least 3 golden crowns, a solid gold throne, 800 kilograms of antique coins, some dating to 200 BCE, coins from the Roman Empire, the Napoleonic era, the Dutch East Indies, sacks and trays overflowing with gems. Vault A alone held over 100,000 artifacts. Estimates placed the total value, and this is without even touching the largest vaults, at over $18 billion. Everything was catalogued, weighed, described, photographed for the record. But none of this was published. The images were sealed, the reports restricted. The vaults were shut again, as if nothing had happened. It was a rare moment when the curtain lifted, and just as quickly, it fell. But there was one vault they didn't open. Vault B, the largest, the most heavily sealed, and the one surrounded by warnings. Vault B is unique in construction. It lies directly beneath the deity's sanctum, and unlike the others, it has remained untouched for centuries. And in the 1880s, the royal family of Travancore commissioned a detailed inventory of the temple's assets, part of a broader effort to document the kingdom's wealth for taxation, legacy, and internal record keeping. This wasn't a public audit. It was a confidential royal ledger, handwritten, meant only for the palace archives. And yet, in those pages, Vault B was listed, described not vaguely, but with extraordinary precision. Solid gold thrones, diamond-studded crowns, untouched sacks of unique coins, gold ceremonial attire, and ornaments for deities. Enough, it was said, to rival the fortunes of a small nation. But here's the strange part. Despite recording its contents in such detail, the door of Vault B hadn't been opened in living memory, and it wasn't opened then. Which raises the question, how did they know what was inside? Palace archivists believe the records were based on oral tradition passed down from earlier generations, possibly from temple priests or royals who claimed ancestral knowledge. But over time, no one alive could confirm it. What remains was a door no one dared open, and a ledger that read like myth, copied into a king's book. Vault B is said to have been sealed long ago by temple sages, not to protect wealth, but to bind something else. In 2011, when the inspection team reached Vault B, they encountered 3 barriers: a grated iron gate, a thick wooden door behind that, and finally, the 3rd door. Solid iron, no handle, no lock, no hinges, just sealed. Etched into its surface was a single image, a cobra, not painted, not ornamental, but engraved directly into the metal. No verified photos of this final door have ever been released. What we know comes only from those who claimed they stood before it. The temple priests recognized it instantly, the mark of Nagabandham, a serpent seal. According to ancient law, the vault was sealed not by man, but by a mantra, the Garuda mantra, a hymn to Vishnu's eagle mount to bind the chamber against intrusion. And behind that seal, not just gold, spiritual guardians. Legend tells of immense cobras, fierce celestial beings, and a yakshi, a vampiric spirit from Kerala's folklore, said to lure intruders with a sultry smile before destroying them in flames. No one forgets her name. It's still painted near the vault. The priests were clear. Vault B was not locked. It was sealed, and if disturbed, it would not just break stone, it would rupture balance. They warned that the chamber lay directly beneath the head of the giant deity statue, the very one inside the temple. To force it open, they said, might crack the sanctum or awaken something buried beneath the god's gaze. The astrologers were summoned. They performed the Devat Prasnam ritual, a form of divine inquiry. The results were immediate and unanimous. Vault B must not be opened. To do so would invoke the deity's wrath. It would bring calamity. The Supreme Court listened and agreed. The inventory was frozen. Vault B remained shut. But something had already shifted. Days after the vaults were opened, T.P. Sundarajan, the man who Petitioner started it all, died suddenly of a heart attack. He was 70, unwell, yes, but the timing struck a nerve. Then more came. One inventory official lost his mother days after the inspection. Another suffered a serious injury. Others reported strange dreams, fevers, disturbances. Minor incidents, maybe, but the timing raised eyebrows. And beyond the temple walls, something else began to stir. The rains arrived early. Streets flooded. Protests flared. Across the country a mood of unrest took hold. Shapeless, but heavy. Inside the temple, nothing stirred. This wasn't the first time someone tried to break the seal. In 1908, during a devastating famine, local officials, without temple approval, attempted to open Vault B, but they didn't get far. As soon as the stone was disturbed, a nest of cobras reportedly surged from the darkness. Others claimed it wasn't snakes, but sounds. A low, thunderous roar, like an ocean trapped behind the stone. They abandoned the effort, not out of failure, out of fear. It seems unlikely they managed to breach the door, but they simply triggered its guard, but no one can say for sure. But ever since, Vault B has been treated not just as sacred, but volatile. Not everyone believes that Vault B was meant to store treasure. Some say it was never a vault at all, but a prison, a chamber not built to preserve wealth, but to hold something in. Something sacred, yes, but sacred in the way a fire is sacred. Worshipped, but never touched. Whatever the truth, the results are real. The court halted all further attempts. The Travancore royal family publicly declared they would never support opening it, and the temple priests continue to say that anyone who tries will answer not to man, but to Vishnu. In darkness and under divine and legal protection, in the endless stillness, sits a vast treasure. In a country governed by law, where temples are counted and catalogued, there is one place where even the highest court stepped back and said, some doors are better left unopened. But not every warning is carved in stone. Some warnings aren't spoken. They're written in code. There's a book that only warns you once, not when you say it, when you read it. Watch the Book of Soiga next. Tap the card and unlock it. Most don't make it this far, but you did. Welcome to the archive. Subscribe, because next time we're going to a Himalayan lake where, when the ice melts, the dead rise. I'm Nico, and I'll meet you in the next mystery.